We'll be happy to begin with you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you very much for inviting me to testify today on EPA's experience designing and implementing cap-and-trade programs. While at EPA, I have worked on both traditional regulation and emissions trading. And in my remarks this morning, I will focus on what cap-and-trade is, what it has achieved, and why it works, the basic principles that we have followed. Cap-and-trade is a market-based mechanism for addressing environmental problems and contains several key elements that distinguish it from other regulatory approaches. First, it seeks to reduce emissions by setting a mandatory cap or limit on the aggregate emissions of an entire category of sources. The cap both establishes the emission reduction goal and provides predictability for the allowance market. All significant sources, existing and new, of a particular industry or sector should be included to minimize the shifting of production and emissions to uncovered sources. Once the size, the timing, and scope of the cap are defined, allowances equal to the cap are then distributed. How the government distributes allowances is an important policy and economic design decision. Emission allowances are valuable assets. Keep in mind, though, that whether they are distributed for free or by auction, it does not affect the total quantity of allowances under the cap, nor the environmental outcome of the program, nor the total cost of the program. It does, however, affect how the costs are distributed across the economy and who ultimately pays for the program. Allowances can be traded, bought or sold, and banked, saved. Unrestricted trading and banking allows companies to choose and, importantly, change compliance options and minimize compliance costs. Banking also encourages early reductions and provides liquidity, which can be a cushion against price volatility and unforeseen market events. The fourth element of these programs is monitoring. It is important that all sources accurately measure and report all their emissions. Along with complete transparency of data, this provides the foundation for ensuring both the emission reduction goal and the credibility of the allowance market. At the end of each control period, sources must surrender allowances equal to their emissions. And finally, there must be clear consequences for noncompliance known up front to the participants. This provides certainty for both the environment and for the sources. Unlike other trading programs, cap-and-trade has a cap, which ensures achievement of the emission reduction goal. Unlike traditional command and control regulation, individual source control requirements are not specified, so sources have the flexibility to experiment and the opportunity to choose and change control strategies without needing government approval. The allowance system also rewards companies for achieving greater control through, for instance, technology innovation. As a utility vice president once said to me, the beauty of cap-and-trade is that I can explain it to my CEO in 15 minutes. The results from our acid rain and NOx budget programs have been impressive. SO2 emissions from power plants are down 40%. Acid rain is down 30% across the eastern United States, with costs that turned out to be less than 1/3 of what we had predicted. Summertime NOx emissions under our NOx budget program are down 70%, as are the number of areas exceeding the ozone standard. And compliance in both these programs is over 99%. Cap-and-trade is also efficient to run. We work with more than 7,000 sources and have completed over 70,000 allowance transactions involving over 230 million allowances. Yet the acid rain program takes only 50 EPA employees and the NOx program 20. Given this success, in 2005, we chose this mechanism for the Clean Air Interstate Rule to reduce SO2 and NOx emissions further. So why have these programs worked? For the acid rain program, the answer is simple. We had good legislation, and I want to thank you for that. But secondly, in developing that law and its implementing regulations, and in designing other programs, and then in the day-to-day program operations, we have tried to adhere to the following principles. First, keep your eye on the prize. Above all, government needs to focus on achieving the emission reduction goal and letting the market work to keep costs down. Secondly, keep it simple. so it's understood by all, particularly those who must comply with it. Third, be transparent. Transparency builds public support and market confidence. Fourth, provide certainty, both in what's required and what the consequences will be for noncompliance. And fifth, be accountable. Measure and report results, including the impact on the economy and the environment. In closing, let me reiterate that cap-and-trade can be a cost-effective, flexible, and efficient instrument for achieving and sustaining environmental benefits. And its success depends greatly both on the sound design as well as effective implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McLean.